Today's commencement speaker is the Honorable Ron Jeffrey. Literally thousands of youth and their family have benefited from Ron Jeffrey's life work. He believes in spending time with children, listening to them, caring about their concerns, sharing activities, and providing positive role models to steer them along a path of personal accountability. As Director of Youth Alternatives in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which employs several counselors, sociologists, and case managers, he sought the assistance of many community members and founded organizations to provide viable options and support. He also was the founder of the Wyoming Association of Marriage and Family Therapists and helped organize the Laramie County Drug Council and Laramie County Juvenile Services Board. Through the years, many organizations have asked him to share his wisdom. He has served on the Wyoming State Library Council, Labor Commission, and Humanities Council, and has been appointed to the Governor's Crime and Juvenile Justice Advisory Committees, the African American Wellness Project, and the Community Action Board. Naturally, Mr. Jeffrey has received many commendations for his work, not only in Wyoming, but from national organizations. Under his direction, Youth Alternatives received the 247th Point of Light presentation by former President George Bush. He has received the George Washington Honor Medal from the Freedom Foundation, the Thomas Jefferson Award from the American Institute for Public Service, and the Phi Delta Kappa Award for Service to Education, among others. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Ron Jeffrey to the stage.
Now see, there's a big difference in what he had to read and what I would have wrote. I mean, I probably would have said stuff like, he's good looking, doesn't have any money, but has a wife that does. I think we could have found several things that were a really good description of me. President Ryan and distinguished faculty, parents, family, and last but not least, the graduating class of 2015, thanks for allowing me to share this time with you. I'm going to try very hard to do something that I don't tend to do. I've written this out, and I'm going to try to stick to this. It means there's a possibility that somebody won't ask you what's going to follow Ron Jeffrey's speech, and you won't say tomorrow. You have that possibility if I'll stick to this. Sometimes when I try to write things out, I have a tendency to get all the way into it, and I look up, and I've only actually accomplished the first paragraph of what I had written out. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm married. I have two beautiful daughters. Last week, I celebrated my 38th anniversary. Yeah, that's what she said, too. She couldn't believe it. However, I got to tell you, I'm a little worried that I may have lost some of my sex appeal. You see, the other day, my wife told me when I graduated from Chadron, I had a big afro. I was looking good. She said, I used to buy you Head and Shoulders for your afro, and now I buy you Mop and Glow. So I'm a little worried about where all that ends up. You know, I've been fortunate enough to travel around this great country. People are always surprised when I tell them I'm living in Wyoming. Usually people ask questions like, do you ride your horse back there in Wyoming? Or my favorite one is, I didn't know there were any black people in Wyoming. And I tell them, I generally respond and say, yes, there are. And the other 5 are doing well while I'm here. You know, I look at this beautiful facility and I think about how when I played, it wasn't like this. Matter of fact, all of basketball has changed. We used to have those tight shorts that look like just tight boxer underwear. These guys got these long baggy pants now. And it used to drive me crazy because, see, I had the skinniest legs of anyone you could ever look at. I mean, my legs were so skinny that when I played basketball at Chadron, I would put on 12 pairs of socks, hoping that it would make my legs look bigger. But it didn't work. Looked like 12 pairs of socks with a finger sticking up out of them. Actually, I'd like to share one other thing about Chadron that came to my mind when I got here today. When I got here yesterday, because it's been a while. I forgot how cold it was. Some of my friends would ask me why I always stayed at Chadron when I was here, and my usual response would be, I got a good education, I love my teammates, but mostly there were more girls there than there were boys. But the actual real reason I stayed at Chadron is reflected in this poem I read. It's winter in Chadron, and the gentle breezes blow, 70 miles an hour at 25 below. Oh, how I love Chadron. Yes, the weather here is wonderful, so I guess I'll hang around. I could never leave Chadron, because I'm frozen to the ground. Seriously, I really am honored to be here. You know, I struggled with what to say to you this afternoon, and all kinds of thoughts kept coming through my mind. I woke up several times in the last few days, jotting down ideas and trying each idea and playing with it and tearing it up and trying something else. Then it seemed that God reached down and took my hand and opened my heart and my mind to the words I wanted to say. People, there is a sadness in our world today. The sadness of hundreds of people being killed and hundreds more wounded by misguided individuals turning a night at the theater, a day at school, or a Christmas party into a moment in hell. The sadness of seeing horrific images of people around the world losing their life and their homes in a war that's not really supposed to be a war. The sadness has filled the world with bickering and noise. And you know that noise of hate, the noise of hatred is deafening. That sadness may seem overwhelming at times, but it can be overcome by the goodness that exists in this world. I see that energy, joy, and potential reflected in each one of your eyes. I know it feels like a heavy load, like the burden is too great for you to carry. But despite the sadness, every single day I see glimpses of the potential of the human race. Everyone in this room possesses a treasure that is far greater and impactful than all the money in the world. Each of you have a treasure, a very special treasure that you can share if you choose to. And that treasure is you. Now, you may think that sounds a little corny and a little like a cliche, but you know, I've seen lives change because someone took the time to care about someone else. Years ago, I worked with this young man. He was 12 years old when I first met him. His name was Kerry. You know, I've always been haunted by this kid's memory. At age 21, Kerry was convicted of armed robbery, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. It was hard for me not to blame myself. To this day, I still wonder what I could have done differently that would have changed the outcome of his life. Oh, I know we're all responsible for our own lives, but it was hard for me not to feel that I had failed Kerry. A few months ago, I had a visitor. It was Kerry. He's now 46 years of age. He had spent 15 years of his life in prison. He's got a good job now. He's working in the oil fields, and he just wanted to stop and say hello. We talked for a long while, and he reminded me of the many things that we had done together. But of all the things he talked about, the thing that struck me most was when he talked about Jason, his volunteer mentor. He said, when he was in prison, he thought about Jason. He said he never forgot him and believed that knowing him, knowing that someone cared about him, was what helped him survive. His words, they hit me hard. They almost brought a tear to my eye. It reminded me of a saying that I have on my wall at work. Every child is just one caring adult away from being a success story. For 15 years, Kerry sat in a prison cell and held on to someone that made him feel that he was cared for. Jason touched Carrie's life 40 years ago, and he's still making a difference in his world today. I'm reminded of a story I once heard about this little boy. This little boy wanted to play football with his daddy. It's a Saturday afternoon, the sun was shining, he kept running up to his daddy. He said, Dad, let's go throw the football together. And his father said, son, go out and play. I've got a lot of work to do. Little boy walked away with his head hung down and went outside, threw the football up and caught it. Thought he'd been outside for a long time. You know how time is to a child. Only been out there for a few minutes. Came running back in and said, Daddy, come on, let's go play. Well, father was irritated because he didn't want to do this work his boss had given him to do anyway. But he had noticed while he was working on this paperwork that he had, that there was a picture of a map of the world in a magazine next to him. So he grabbed that magazine, he tore that picture of the map of the world out, tore it into little pieces, said to his son, now son, you go on off in your room and you put this picture of this map of the world together. Little boy walked away into his room all excited because his daddy had given him something to do. Father kind of leaned back in the chair, feeling pretty smart at this point because he had gotten the child out of his hair. So little boy walked in the room and father figured he had plenty of time. And then all of a sudden the boy came running back in about 30 minutes later with the map all put together. And the father was astonished. He thought, how did you do that? How did you get that put together so quickly? And little boy said, well, Dad, on the other side of that picture of the map of the world was a picture of a person. And you know, once I got that person all straightened out and all put together, the world came easy. See, it doesn't take you giving away millions of dollars or doing all these amazing things. Sometimes it takes you just touching the life of one little person. I came to Chadron State as a boy, but I left here as a man. The town, the teachers, friends like football great Benny Francis, and the quiet mentorship of people like Con Marshall were a part of my life experiences. I want to share 3 of those experiences with you. My first gift that I want to share with you is wipe away your ugly eyes. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Although there are many obstacles that are going to get in your way, the biggest one is inside of each of you, those ugly eyes. You know what I mean. Ugly eyes are when our vision is so clouded by self-doubt that it doesn't allow us to see the beauty around us. Ugly eyes are when we become so used to being criticized or criticizing others that we think seeing ugly is the norm. Without a vision, it's hard for us to balance what we need, what we want, and what we are capable of achieving. Most of us wake up every morning with 2 wonderful gifts, our eyes. I don't just mean the eyes that you see with, but the eyes you feel, touch, and smell with. As a child, your vision is clear and crisp. You saw no ugliness. And every day you were excited by life's new experiences. And then as an adult, you let reality and all the things come into your world vision. But that vision is still there. You have wipers that can wipe away the ugliness if you choose to use it. My second gift to you is about making choice. Sometimes we think we don't have a choice. I worked with a young girl one time this is years ago. She kept running away from home. She ran away so many times that the police kept bringing her back, and she'd run away again. I hadn't met her during this whole time. It was several years later that I met her. When I met her, she had finally been found. She was found in an alley in Las Vegas. She had been raped, and she had been huffing glue. It was ugly. It was a sad situation. This was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little girl whose life had gone into drugs and gone into her being harmed in just terrible ways. You see, when she came back, we found out that the reason this young girl kept running away from home was that whenever her father decided to have a drink and came home, he decided it was her bedroom that he would go and visit. So he'd go into her bedroom, he'd molest her, And one of the saddest parts about that story is his mother knew. Now that's sad. So everybody that worked with this girl said she had no choice. She had to get away from that. That's why she ran away. And I stood up at a meeting one day and I said, no, I don't agree with that. Something I've learned from a professor that we had here at Chadron State said. I remember her saying to me one time that the most hopeless situation in the world is one without choice. So what I said to that little girl, and the way I worked with her, was to tell her that she always had choices. She always had the ability to do something. Her life was not defined by one choice that said she had to run away, be raped, and use drugs. There were choices, because choices empower you. Choices give you the ability to do something that you think you can't do. See, some of you chose to be here today. There's probably a few that chose not to. I hope when you go back, they're really sorry they didn't come, because you made a choice. But just so you're willing to do it, make some choice, you can make the changes that need to be made in this world. You know, my last gift to you is take responsibility for your success. Simply take responsibility for it. You see, when I was a kid, we had a saying, you got to bring some butt to kick some butt. Now, what that simply means is no matter what I do, no matter how you feel about what I do, you cannot affect what I do unless you're willing to take a risk. But some of us aren't willing to take a risk. We want to blame others and have other people take responsibility. I'm reminded of this neighbor of mine, had a dog. Dog made the most awful noise, whining and making noise and moaning all the time. One day went up to the neighbor's door, said, that dog, he's driving me crazy. That dog is moaning and whining and crying all the time. What's wrong with that dog? Neighbor says, you know that old dog of mine? He likes laying over there in that corner. And that corner has got a lot of weathered wood and splinters, and the splinters stick him in his butt. It hurts him. That's why he moans and cries all the time. So I looked at him and confused, and I said, I don't understand. Why doesn't that dog move if it's sticking him and hurting him? And the old guy said, well, I guess it's not hurting him bad enough to move yet. You see, some of us are just like that dog. We whine, we complain, we moan, but we don't do anything. Some of us think that whining and complaining is the equivalent of doing something. But you know what? It's not. You got to do something to get something. And finally, I want to say this to you, my fellow alumni. As you begin your journey to find your future, don't run. Walk slowly. Give mom and dad and aunts and uncles and grandparents, in fact, give all of us a chance to share this moment with you. And when you hit a wall and your journey gets too tough, remember the lyrics of this popular song I just read. I woke up this morning, saw a world full of trouble. But how'd we ever get so far down? Can it ever turn around? So I turned to the heavens. I thought, God, why don't you do something? People living in poverty, children sold into slavery. I shook my fist to the heavens and I said, God, why don't you do something? He said, I did. I created you. Thank you.